all of my children would verify this true statement. I don't always know what terminology and phrases people are still using. Now, I'm sure that that's not just me, because I think what happens is as we get older, we just assume we drag all those phrases and thoughts right along with us, and yet the current generation is not using them. So I don't know if this is a phrase that's still being used, but I've used it many times, and someone might look at me or I might look at someone and say, "Get a grip." Now we know what that means, right? It means you're out of control. Fix it. Get back in control. Be doing what you ought to be doing. Get a grip. Paul was writing to the Galatians, and he basically said, get a grip. I can't believe that you are running away from the grace of God to a different gospel. It's not another one. In other words, it's not one similar to what we have. It's a totally different one. Where have you gone? And that phrase, I marvel that you are so soon moving away from the grace of God. That's Paul spiritually telling those Christians, get a grip. Get back in control of yourself as it relates to the grace of God. Probably we cannot spend too much time on the grace of God. Oftentimes I hear that people think we don't believe in the grace of God. We don't talk about the grace of God. We hide from the grace of God, and we make it to be more like earning salvation and working our way to heaven. Every now and then, especially during this time of year, I like to take a little bit of time and talk about the grace of God. And so for the next 3 Sunday mornings, I want to give you 3 thoughts about the grace of God. 3 things that I would ask that all of us get a grip. Get a grip on the grace of God this way. And today, here it is. Get a grip. Pursue the grace of God. The New Testament uses the word for grace 155 times. And the Old Testament even talks about the grace of God 190 times. The grace of God. I want us to think for just a few minutes about 2 thoughts as it pertains to pursuing the grace of God. 2 things that I think are very important that will help us as we start this journey into the grace of God. Number 1, God has pursued us by His grace. The grace of God has pursued us. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean to say that the grace of God has pursued us? Well, think for just a minute about the word pursue. Now, you know what that means. To go after intentionally and intently, to really make an effort to say, I'm going to go get it. Guys, did you have to pursue that woman you finally married? Or ladies, did you have to pursue him to talk him into it? Which was it? Well, my story is that I had to pursue. And you're going, okay, that makes sense. Well, I'm seeing some guys that make sense for too. See, the word got out that I was trying to find this young lady to ask her on a date. And she ran from me. For 2 weeks, I couldn't catch her. I was pursuing. It took me a while, but I happened to spot her going into the library. She thought she could go there and never be caught because I didn't know where it was. And she was almost right. So I saw my time. I can catch her in the library and she can't yell and scream and holler because they'll throw her out. So I cornered her and I got a date. Pursuit. Took me 2 weeks. Think about things that you pursue. Is it exercise? Is it a job? What is it that you have pursued in life? You know what it means to pursue. And I want to suggest to you that God has pursued us by His grace. It's stated as much in Titus chapter 2 and verse 11. Notice this phrase. The grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. Has appeared. He pursued us. Think about that word, has appeared. The word means to appear suddenly, finally, to achieve a purpose. That's the idea of appearing. In other words, there was something going on in the background, behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden, it appeared. I really liked the books that came out some time back called Magic Eye. You know what I'm talking about? Magic Eye. It's that artist, or photographs, whatever it was, that you look at it and it's just that. But there's another picture inside it that you have to try to bring out. And so you sit there and you go, you turn and you move. And I've seen people stretching and pushing and I just can't find it, you know. And what they say is you have to stare at it for a long time. Let me tell you how I learned to see the pictures inside the Magic Eye pictures. I look at it and cross my eyes. And all of a sudden, it pops out. And then I uncross my eyes and it's still there. Now, I see that you're skeptical about that, but it's true. Here it is. You stare at it. You stare at it. And it appears. That's what that word means. It was going on in the background. It's there. But eventually, it appears. When John the Baptizer was born, and in Luke chapter 1, Zechariah made this great prophecy about what he was going to do. That he was going to prepare the way for the next one coming. And in verse 79 of Luke 1, it says, about this one coming after John, he will bring light to those in darkness and in the shadow of death. That word, the grace of God has appeared, Titus 2:11, is the same word spoken that Jesus would bring light to those who are in darkness. He appeared. In fact, Peter would write in 2 Peter chapter 1 how that the prophets had desired for all the centuries to see what was behind the writing of God. It was all there. They wanted to see it. They desired to look into it. They were staring at it, but it never popped out. Until Jesus came into the world and he appeared. So when did God start pursuing us? When did the grace of God begin the pursuit of us? From the very moment that we ran away from him. For immediately after the sin of Adam and Eve in the garden, God looked at that serpent who had been used to tempt them to sin, and he said, "Cursed are you more than all beasts. On your belly you shall go and eat dust all the days of your life. And I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed." In Galatians chapter 3, Paul identifies that seed that God prophesied in the garden to be Jesus the Christ. He appeared. John 1:14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. And John was a witness and said, "This is he of whom I said, he is preferred before me, for he was before me." The law came through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Therefore, Paul would state in Acts 20 and verse 32, to those brethren whom he thought he might not see again, "Brethren, I commend you to God and to the word of his grace that is able to build you up and give you inheritance among all those who are sanctified." The grace of God pursued us from the moment that we fell away. God's grace in the background began working. And just like the magic eye picture, thousands of years later, Jesus appeared as the glory of God. And in him, we see the grace of God as he came and lived and died and was resurrected. The grace of God had been pursuing us all along, and he appeared as the best proof and evidence that everything God had ever said was true. The greatest witness ever to all things that God has ever said was in the person of Jesus Christ. He is the appearance. He is that light. He did pop onto the stage. Number two, we pursued the grace of God. Now, contrary to what many religious people teach, we do pursue the grace of God. There's a wide teaching that says this: man is so consumed by sin, so destroyed by the devil, that he can do nothing at all in response to God until God moves on his heart. Nothing. That's not what the Bible pictures. The Bible pictures us as involved with the grace that He has pursued us. We pursue the grace that He offers. Listen to these words. We do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our infirmities, but was in all points tempted, like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore, notice, come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. That passage doesn't say, just sit. And eventually, God will come and massage your heart so that you will be open to hear what He has to say. It doesn't say that. Boldly come before the throne of God. Number one, our pursuit of the grace of God comes with a bold approach. I like what this word means. It means to leave witness that something is worth remembering. Back to the pursuit. Did you give flowers? Did you give candy? What did you do to be worth remembering? Boldly come. This is the picture of one who says, I'm not going to be forgotten. Now, it's not the same as the publican who stood in the temple and said, God, thank you that I'm better than him, that sinner over there. Thank you for not making me like him. Oh, I'm so much better. Paraphrasing his words, that's what he meant. That's not boldly approaching the throne of grace. The other one did. He wouldn't even lift his head. He said, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Now that's boldly approaching the throne of God. He left a memorial that God would not forget him. And as we pursue the grace of God, it begins with a bold approach. Number two, that we may obtain mercy. An aggressive reach. The word means to reach out aggressively and take hold of. The Hebrew writer is laying out this concept. You know what you need. And now that you know that God has been pursuing you all along, be aggressive. Reach out and grab what he has to offer. It sort of reminds me of some discussions I've heard over the years about education in school. Education is a privilege. You should be taught. You should go to school expecting to get what you want. You need to go and say, I want to be trained. I want to be taught. I want to be better. That's how to approach education. It's what God says about himself. You reach out aggressively. and you take what I have to offer. Third, so that we can then find the grace. The word find means to arrive at a conclusion. This is what I want. I found it. I didn't stumble on it. It didn't slap me upside the face. I want it. I'm looking for it. I know where it is. And so I go and grab it. And here's what's amazing. Once you grab it, now you understand it. It's amazing, isn't it? The longer you live in God, the more you appreciate what you have. That's what he's saying. So that we can find grace to help. We want God's grace, so we go after it. And then once we're in it, we begin to appreciate it because we know. According to Acts 15, verse 11, we believe that by the grace of God, we'll find salvation. Get a grip, people. Get a grip. And pursue the grace of God. He has been pursuing all of us since the beginning of time. And in the background, he was working. And finally, Jesus appeared. I get it. So now we pursue the grace of God, boldly approaching the throne, reaching out aggressively to take what he has. And at that opportune time, finding what he said you can have, salvation. Therefore, close with these words from 2 Timothy 2 and verse 1. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Today, if you're not a child of God, you don't know the power of the grace of God. Pursue it. Look for it. Find it. And there you will understand how great it is to be a child of God. There are some here who have the intellectual knowledge to understand what the grace of God is all about, but you've never reached out and grabbed it aggressively. Anyone who says, I want to be a child of God, I want you to immerse me into Christ today, to be in the family of God. That's someone aggressively grabbing and saying, it's going to happen. That's what I want. You can do that today. And in that obedience, you will find the grace that you need for all of life. The grace of God's for you. And if you need it in your life because you haven't grabbed hold of it, today would be a great day to do so while we stand and sing together.